Okay, and we're live. Hey, wholesale rebels all around the world. Welcome to our February 2022 community call. And we have a special one today because we're going to talk about a lot of subject, Paul, that I think a lot of people are treating as non-interesting or non-sexy or, oh my God, this is like IPs and ASIN M&As and stuff like that, but crucial from a perspective of having your wholesale business. And I have the privilege, guys, today to be joined by Paul Rafelson. Paul, it's a pleasure to have you with us. And
thank you so much for bringing me here. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Paul, you're a founder of SellerBasics, a legal service that supports Amazon sellers. But I also know that what some of our audience might not yet know, but like we have one thing in common. You have a kind of Polish part of family, and you're every year in Poland. All right, so we have to settle it once and for all. Poland or United States, which is better? Come on.
That's an impossible question to answer. That I can't answer. I love both countries for different reasons. We spend our summers in Poland and you know, on the seashore, and it's beautiful. But you know, the United States is beautiful too. I mean, I don't know. It's fun to be in Europe, and I love Europe, and I love America. So it's like I can't say that one's better than the other. I think it's just, you know, they're just different, you know, and it's nice to get to experience and actually spend enough time in a country to actually feel like at home there. I think it's always just a lot of fun. So I mean, I obviously enjoy my time when I'm in Europe and in the summer, and working out of Europe is a lot of fun, but I can't pick favorites. I'm sorry, I can't. I mean, I'm an American, so I'm a little bit biased. I mean, obviously, I love America, but you know what I mean. Like, Poland's a lot of fun.
So tell me from this perspective, because I know you own a property in Poland. You have a house you have your home in US. So the next place, if you were to buy a next property, what country would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I think Spain. I think I've really I went to an affiliate world this summer. In Spain, and I was in Barcelona, and I just absolutely fell in love with Barcelona. I just thought it was the coolest places. I lived in the Netherlands for a little while, not too far where they have the Formula One race in Zandvoort, which is about 25 minutes outside of Amsterdam, actually in Haarlem, but very close to Zandvoort if you're a Formula One fan. And we love the Netherlands. So I mean, it's hard to pick, but I mean, Spain was very, very, very amazing. I love the Netherlands. I don't know. I mean, I really do love Europe. So but Europe, it's cool. It's like, once you're in the continent, you can kind of drive to different places, you know, like I took kind of like a spontaneous road trip to Berlin one day. It was just kind of fun. We went on a trip to Berlin. And that's the fun thing about Europe. You can go just drive around and see different things. And I think that's kind of the one thing about Europe that's a little bit more interesting in America is that there's American states. While certain states have their specific, cool things like, Florida with its beaches, or, Europe, it's so weird when it sort of feels like you're driving state to state, but it's a different country, and it's a totally different environment and a very different style when you go from country to country. It's just kind of cool. So.
Yeah, I agree that there's a bit of even the road trips between like US road trip versus Europe road trip. There are two different type of road trips completely. I've done both, and they are.
Me too.
I wanted to thank you for joining us today, and
sure.
I do want to ask a little bit about maybe starting like how did you get into e-commerce space, and what have you been doing prior? But like the people that don't know you, like SellerBasics, just wanted to mention that there's like. I love how you describe it in the way that like Amazon sellers deserve access to comprehensive account health and protection services at an affordable price, and that is what SellerBasics is doing. And there is a plethora of topics that sellers, when they start growing, or even when they just start, they need support of, and very often they just think like, oh my God, my account got suspended, or my ASIN has an issue. That's going to be the moment when like it's over, but like persistence is the name of the game. So I'm very curious, like maybe you could weave us into the story of like, when did you decide you're going to go into and help e-commerce sellers, and has it always been on your radar, or how has it been for you?
Yeah, so SellerBasics is sort of an idea that we came up with that was based on. So we have a law practice that's a true law practice, and we have a network of lawyers that are either part of my firm or different law firms, and sometimes we refer our clients to those law firms for help on specific issues, and we sort of built this program called SellerBasics, which isn't a law firm; it's a protection plan. So you have dedicated account health people there to help you. And we're big believers in prevention is the best medicine. So like we actually we make it very cheap, very affordable to get preventative help so you don't get suspended. That's always our preference, not getting you suspended. Or you not getting suspended, excuse me. And then you have this network of lawyers who work behind it, who support it. So if there's a legal issue, so if your suspension or your issue relates to an intellectual property claim, which wholesalers probably, some of if depending, well, maybe that's what wholesalers, but resellers certainly deal with this on a regular basis. There's a legal team that sort of backs you up. So it's like a legal plan, so to speak, but it's more of a comprehensive account health plan, but it's not the law firm in itself. So we still have a separate law practice as well as some other lawyers who support SellerBasics. How did I get into it? That's a great question. It's also a bit of a long story, so I'm going to do it very fast. One, I used to be an Amazon seller. I was doing retail arbitrage in 2002, 3, 4. Like I was doing it before they called it retail arbitrage. In fact, some guy at Walmart once called me a scammer. And I said, what's scammy about? Like, I'm buying it for this price and I'm selling it online for that price. I mean, don't sell it to me at this price if you don't want me to resell. Like, I don't get it. I did DVDs, video games, and this was before FBA. So it was very manual and it was actually called like Z Shops, and half.com, which was owned by eBay, was actually my biggest channel when I first started. Amazon came a little later. Half.com is no more. And then I even did Craigslist. I do like drops and meetups and I would whatever. I mean, it was the early days of e-commerce. It wasn't really hadn't really been figured out yet. And you had media mail packages, and I would create these lines at the post office, especially during the holidays. I'd have to mail like 150 packages, what we call media mail. It's a special mailing rate for books and media. And I used to call these jam ups at the post office. So I have a little bit of an e-commerce background from that. Trying to pay my way through school, law school, so I'm not, in boatload of debt, selling on the internet. Coincidentally, many years later, after that, but because there was no scalability, I never went full-time e-commerce, right? It just never seemed like I was going to, I was in law school, so I'm like, I'm not going to make lawyer money doing that stuff. There's no way. Boy, was I wrong. A little early to the party. Turns out you do. You just kind of had to stay with it and sort of with FBA. And that's the story of a lot of our clients. If they were early in the game, pre-FBA, they always tell me the story. Like once the FBA program launched and they went into that, that's when they went from being like $100,000 to $1 million seller, something like that. You hear these stories from the old school sellers. That was the pivotal moment. People don't realize how important FBA is to their business. And the ability to have your product as prime, that's essential to the Amazon customer. Coincidentally, so I went to corporate law, corporate tax, did that for a number of years. I worked for Microsoft in Seattle. And when I was living in Seattle, my wife, or moja żona, went to work for Amazon. And she was in the seller performance team. So now I'm finding myself hanging around all the seller performance people. They weren't called seller performance back then. They were called like MRI, merchant risk investigators or something like that. But, all my friends were the Amazon people. We didn't really, my friends at Microsoft, my colleagues, a little older than me. They were all kind of older with kids. I'm in my 20s, we're in our 20s. And so we're hanging out with the Amazon team. So I'm literally, the dinner time conversation or the bar conversation was so fascinating because I used to be an Amazon seller. And here I am sitting with the team that's like, telling you all the things that are going on in the world of Amazon, just kind of talking about it over dinner conversation. It's really fascinating. So I really got a lot of insight. But the moment that brought me here was actually sales and use tax. Sales tax was an issue that in 2017, I just was working for General Electric, and they had just moved to Boston and restructured things. And I sort of felt like having kind of dismantled this company as a lawyer. Like I was part of the team that basically took General Electric apart. Because if you know the history of General Electric, they owned Universal Studios. They were one of the biggest banks in the world. they really weren't like turbines and jet engines wasn't their main business. They were actually more of a bank than they were anything else. And they owned media stations, they owned washing machine, appliances. We got rid of all of that. Like, not my decision, but that was part of my team. So like it got to a point in 2017 where I decided I wanted to walk away from GE and do something different. I didn't know what that was yet. I assumed it would be continuing in, law firm capacity. But around that time, I got contacted to write a blog post about sales and use tax and about how Amazon sellers were being wrongfully accused of taxes. And knowing what I know, I'm a constitutional law teacher in New York. I was like, that's wrong. Because if you understand Amazon and the transaction, you understand that really this was always my take on it. Amazon is actually the store. So it's like, even, when you get into like concepts of nexus and do you have, which is actually something we still fight to this day. And we actually just won a case in Pennsylvania on, whether FBA creates nexus, and Pennsylvania court agreed with us. But this whole sales tax, which is like VAT, I'm sure you're familiar with it, the US version, all these Amazon sellers were getting falsely accused of like tax evasion, basically, and being told that they owe their life savings. People who were selling back in 2012 were being told by California they owed 5 years of back taxes, and this would destroy them. So I got really pissed off about that, and it really, really angered me. And so it was more of a passion project than an intent to build a law practice. I had no intention of building businesses in e-commerce, but one blog post led to another thing, and the next thing you know, I have a full-fledged law firm. And then later on, we created the SellerBasics program. But the idea, really, what I learned through working on the tax issue, when that blog post sort of snowballed in the law practice, what I learned is this, and I'll leave it at that, is that Amazon sellers need a lot of help. E-commerce sellers need a lot of help. That, this e-commerce revolution created something called the global small business, right? Think about that, a global small business. That word combination would be such an oxymoron in 1990s, 1980s, right? You can't have a global small business. But with FBA and the scalability of Amazon and e-com, all of a sudden these are real. And global small businesses don't understand the interstate economy, the interstate laws, the international laws. So no lawyer was really, right? The lawyers who do that kind of work typically work for really big law firms, and they help companies like my former employees, like employers, Microsoft, Walmart, GE. That's who they're focused on. So I'm kind of like that lawyer with like certain skills. I'm like the Taken lawyer, like Liam Neeson. And I have a certain set of skills that people like, not to be funny, but that sort of was my inspiration. So with that, I went into the practice of law, and it's just been crazy because every year it's like a new issue, it's a new thing, it's a new trend, it's a new this. So like, like right now we'll talk about later, Prop 65, like it's been around for, I don't know, 30, it's such an old law, but it's just totally revived. It's kind of come to a head again in a new way that we're all dealing with. So it's never a dull moment being in this space. But yeah, I always say it was kind of an accident. I lost.
That's definitely, with Amazon and with e-commerce in general, like there's so many things that change and so many things that might change. And I did not start as early as you. I started around 10 years ago in the e-commerce space, but I don't remember a year where we did not face a serious challenge where there was like a lot of legal reading, a lot of digging into what's going on even, and why are we suspended this time? We did not do, and so it's never dull. That's a nice way.
Never dull moment. Yep.
Never dull moment. And I'll just read something that Lori said in the chat, that like SellerBasics is the best. I can't recommend it enough. Every seller should sign for it. So I think that there's huge value. Yeah, huge value in having in your corner a team of somebody who's supporting you on the legal side. And today we want to talk a little bit about a couple different subjects, just to give you a sneak peek into what, Paul, you're kind of expert in. But we wanted to start with like just talking a little bit about Amazon as a visual medium and intellectual property. Most people are scared, I think, of the word intellectual property, and it's like kind of like a word that you don't want ever to hear about it. But your approach is a little bit different, how you're thinking about it, right? Maybe you could speak a little bit to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think IP is something people tend to not know, understand. You know, we think we understand it, but you don't. And I think people use it improperly. They don't really invest in it early on. So you may miss an opportunity, especially if you're starting your own product. You miss an opportunity maybe to use patents. People think patents aren't of value. There's actually a lot of value in having a patent. Trademark, obviously anyone who's brand registered has to deal with trademarks. But there may be other trademarks. And my favorite, what I think is the most underused tool is copyright. Because when I say Amazon's a visual medium, I'll give you an example. I talk to, and I'll use supplement sellers as an example. We have a lot of clients. We have like a whole side practice. It's just supplements. Like, it's crazy how much of a guru I've become in the legal guru. I don't know what to call myself. You know, we're not allowed legally, but we know a lot about the supplement industry. And, you know, a lot of supplement sellers, if you don't know this, like, they get their stuff from the same factories. And sometimes the factories will literally give you this like generic label, right? And then you just write your name at the bottom. Like, there's a little, bar at the bottom, and you just put your name. But your competitor can sell the same product and they put their name. And visually, there's no distinction, right? So somebody shopping on Amazon for, vitamin D might not notice that they're not buying it from you this time. They're buying it from somebody else, because the bottle to the eye looks almost identical, right? You look scrolling through Amazon results, it doesn't. So I always tell my clients, and sometimes I said, use visual copyright. Use copyright to create visual distinction, right? Because copyright is about artistic rights, right? It's about, you could draw a picture of somebody, or, a cartoon or something, and that, it could be a logo also for trademark, but you can also just use that as sort of ornamental artwork on your product. And then if somebody copies you, right, you immediately have a basis to take them down. And that way your customer knows it's you and it's not somebody else. And I think people make that mistake a lot, because when they design products or they create products and then they get upset that somebody's copying them, whether it's the product or the packaging or whether, supplements or anything else. But it's like, had you taken the time to do just a little bit of like ornamental stuff, you can kind of really distinguish yourself from the competitors, and, from sort of because that's what typically happens, right? China-based companies come in, they try to undercut you, and the Amazon consumer doesn't know you from the other person. So they don't know, right? Because visually they'll see 5 results or whatever, they'll see a whole row of results, and visually it may all look the same. So you want to use IP to distinguish yourself and make sure that nobody can look like you in your product. So we like IP. We think it's cheap. Copyright is the cheapest form of IP. You draw a picture on a napkin, you technically have a copyright already. It's created in the law under what we call the common law. You don't actually have to register to actually start having some limited copyright benefits from that. So it's a very easy way to establish some intellectual property. So I always say, when there's opportunity to use IP, use it. Don't go with generic looking stuff. Make your own stuff, or hire people and get the appropriate rights from them when you do, and make your stuff distinctive.
Yeah, just for those who are only in wholesale, that probably is more, it's more into private label stuff. But we want to discuss a little bit of everything here, and I also wanted to ask you, Paul, about a little bit about brand registry, because like, I think there's a lot of, again, people that are thinking, like, if you're going into private label, you're thinking, well, yeah, like IP, okay, like that's a long, complicated process. And then they think of brand registry and they think like, oh, I'm not even going to try this. How do you guys approach like brand registry on Amazon?
So I'm really proud of, what we've done and our team has done in terms of, and this is sort of a pro reseller. And so a whole lot of wholesalers who do sort of reselling too. So let's say, you're selling products wholesale, but maybe you don't have the brand's permission. Maybe you acquired your products from a diverter. A lot of cases, our clients, or you're arbitraging, right? You're just reselling products you're getting from other places. So what historically has been happening for the last, I don't know, since brand registry 2.0 it really took off, is a lot of brands think that if you're on my listing, I can take you down on Amazon. So I can use the brand registry tools to file, an IP complaint and take you off the listing. And if you read, I'll tell you, I mean, I don't want to put myself out of business, but a lot of times the answer to the problems we solve is in the reading. If you just read, you learn a lot just by reading through Amazon's materials. It's actually quite fascinating how so many suspensions is just about reading. I shouldn't say that. Sorry. No, it's very hard. You have to be very still. But what a lot of brands will do is they'll say, "Oh, you're not allowed to sell my product. I'm going to report you as counterfeit without a test buy or infringement to get you knocked off the listing." Now that's been the way, and I just kind of got fed up with it. It wasn't something I was focused on in the last few years because I've been so focused on our mergers and acquisitions practices or exit. But this year, I was kind of forced to take a look at it because people were getting frustrated with resellers couldn't resell. They kept getting kicked off. Their listings kept getting taken down. The brands were bullying them. And I finally took it to Amazon directly. And I said, to their team, I said, guys, look at this. Look at what's going on here. You have these written policies that say you cannot use brand registry to take down sellers of authentic products, meaning that if you take somebody down who's selling a product and that is legitimately your product, not a counterfeit, you can actually lose your brand registry rights. And we have actually successfully had brand registry rights revoked by Amazon. And I'm very proud that we can do that because we're sending a message to the brands to cut it out. There are other ways that they may be able to enforce their IP rights and stop people from selling on Amazon, but not within the Amazon platform. There's still some old gray law that's out there. It's still confusing. But for resellers in this environment, using Amazon is like absolutely the wrong way to go. And I always say my analogy is like the old movie. Remember the movie Predator, where he has the sash of all the skulls? He wears a sash of all his victims with the skulls. I always say that's how I feel about the brand registry rights of the different companies we've taken away, where I put them on my little sash skull, right? Like here lies the brand registry rights of all these brands that tried to mess with our clients or our members. So we're very proud of that.
That goes back to what I started saying is that like almost every year that I've been a seller, that there have been some roadblocks or challenges, and very often sellers, especially those that kind of begin, or they don't have the support, or they don't know where to search for that support. They think that something happened, like let's say the suspension or that kind of IP infringement, or somebody is fighting dirty, not necessarily even white hat techniques. All different stuff can happen, and very often you just think this is it. Like you think that
it's not Amazon it, yeah.
Something, it's not it, right? And
it's not it. There are ways.
Paul, from yeah.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you maybe joining the next question I have, like, because I wanted really to ask you a little bit about what a lot of people are afraid, which is like trends in the account suspensions and ASIN suspensions. There's like everybody's afraid of account suspension, and that's kind of like a lot of people are saying like, oh, don't do arbitrage account suspension, stuff like that. But that has also been changing, and sometimes I know sellers have this feeling that it's not only they're competing against other sellers, but also against Amazon, and it's not necessarily that, right?
No, I mean there have been issues where you've competed against Amazon, but no, I mean, and I'm actually for arbitrageurs, we're very pro. We don't play both sides. We're very pro arbitrage. We think that there are other ways to handle. If you don't like arbitrage, there's other ways to deal with it. We don't do those things, but there are plenty of lawyers out there. The law firm Bori used to be ORYS. Any arbitrager knows that law firm. They've probably gotten a letter from them. There are mechanisms that you can try outside of Amazon, but on the platform, Amazon loves arbitrageurs. And so people, I remember the first year I started in 2017, everyone's like, arbitrage is dead. And maybe that's because a lot of people who started arbitrage moved to private label and they saw that as the future. But Amazon loves arbitrage because arbitrageurs can get products at a very low price and they don't adhere to the minimum advertised price or MAP policy, which is great for the Amazon Prime member. The Amazon Prime member can buy stuff on Amazon at below MAP pricing. That makes Amazon happy. So if you want to understand how Amazon thinks, you have to understand that just ask yourself, is this good for the Prime member? If it's good for the Prime member, Amazon probably likes it. If it's bad for the Prime member, they probably don't. So selling products that are name brand under MAP, minimum advertised price, very good for the Prime member. Part of the reason why we're always competing with China is because China competition keeps prices low, which is good for the Prime member. So you have to understand that Amazon's really just thinking about anything that happens where the Prime member walks away perceiving that the value of Prime is not good is a bad, like that's what their fear is, right? They don't want somebody, that's why you get pricing error issues, because they don't want somebody Googling a product and seeing online, oh, wow, that's so much cheaper at this Google shop or whatever, right? Or, or this website. comparison shopping, because then why am I paying for this Prime membership if I can buy it cheaper here? So Amazon is sort of, this is my theory, it's no proven, but I mean, it's kind of seems to be the way that Amazon's obsession is with a Prime member. So we love arbitrage, and Amazon has told me that they absolutely believe in what's called the first sale doctrine, the right to resell, and they support resellers and arbitrageurs 100%, as long as your product's documentation is good. And this is my biggest forewarning. Your documentation has to be meticulous. So that means you better be sourcing from good places like Marshalls, TJ Maxx, Walmart, Target. If you source from the Goodwill store, not a great idea, because you can't prove the authenticity. You have to prove a chain of custody that's credible. If you source from, you know, Joe Schmo liquidators of Omaha, Nebraska, that nobody's ever heard of, that's not great documentation. So there is sort of a limit to how much, you know, we can do. But if you have good documentation and can prove, you know, where your authenticity is credible, right? If you're buying from Newegg, don't buy from third-party sellers. Buy from Newegg. You know, make sure you don't buy from Amazon third-party. Like you need to have good documentation. But if your documentation is good, Amazon 100% wants you on their platform reselling. It's good for their members. So.
Okay, so tell me this to come back a little bit to the topic. Is account suspension definite an end to your life as a seller?
Yeah, so account suspensions. Yeah, so account suspensions. Good news is we aren't seeing as many account suspensions. I actually saw somebody advertise that their account suspension rate was like 100% reinstatement rate. I'm like, well, duh, because they're not really suspending accounts as much as they used to, so unless for things that are really egregious or, you know, a ton of complaints that haven't been addressed. But for most people, if you do the hygiene, you do the work. That's why literally we created SellerBasics, because we have account health teams that we're doing in real time. Like the idea is not to build a backlog. Think about like brushing your teeth. Reason we brush our teeth, we don't want plaque in our teeth, right? So SellerBasics is sort of a brushing your teeth approach to account health, right? You're basically every day as things happen, or every time something happens, you're coming to us, we're helping you, no extra charge, and we're keeping your account clean, right? We're trying to, that's our focus, right? ASIN suspension, on the other hand, there have been some issues. So one issue is, especially with the private label sellers, compliance is a big deal right now. Amazon is being told by the courts that they are accountable for the harm that sellers cause. Basically, like any store would be accountable. So if you buy something at your local Walmart, or Auchan, if you want to go to Polish reference, but if you buy something at your local store and you get hurt, right, the store is responsible, even if it's not really their fault, even if it's the manufacturer's fault. Like the idea of strict liability, we call it. So Amazon is being told that they are strictly liable. They've spent the last, you know, up until the last few years, you know, their first, let's say, 18, 19 years of their existence, they were sort of saying, we're not a store, we're just a marketplace, and we're not responsible. And this is part of why Prop 65 is a problem, which we'll get into in a little bit. So they're very now concerned about FDA compliance, FTC compliance, consumer product safety compliance, like, and they're very big on this. And so a lot of the suspensions we're seeing on the ASIN side that are valid or warranted are because people don't even know the products they sell are regulated, right? People sell products on Amazon all the time that they don't even know they require an FDA number or an FT or their claims are off on their listing, right? There's all these types of suspensions. Now we can help you with that. We can deal with it, but this is what I see more often than not. There's always the related account suspension, which is the most annoying suspension ever, because sometimes it can be like your 3PL causes a related account suspension because they're a 3PL for another account, and Amazon, and that's a pain. It's a pain, but you can deal with them most of the time, pretty easy. Just takes a bit of work. But the real suspensions that I find to be most tragic are these ones, because sometimes the answer is you're stuck, right? If your product is, you know, class 2 FDA, like, you're not going to get back online anytime soon. If Amazon's asking for an FDA number, like a, you know, pre-clearance or whatever, you're not going to get back online fast. It takes time. So, you know,
so
making sure
we kind of talked. Yeah. Sorry, please finish. Yeah.
No, just saying, making sure your listing bullets and things are good for FTC, that's Federal Trade Commission purposes. Make sure you're not overstating things, making sure you're, you know, if you're using other brands, you stay compatible with, and then making sure that if you have like an FDA product, which is like anything that goes in or on the body, right? They you know, or anything that comes in contact with something that goes in or on the body, you think, you know, there may be an FDA issue. The last thing I'll say for the wholesalers, this is the frustrating thing, is the documentation. There's a bit of a a bug, I'll call it, with Amazon in terms of, products that are widely known, sold by major manufacturers, major companies, and Amazon's asking for documentation. There was actually just an article in Modern Retail about that. It's affecting, sellers of collectibles right now, especially because the documents are old. But Amazon's asking the resellers to do testing on products where it's like you're just a reseller and the product's a known name brand. It might have been a product that Amazon itself was selling, so there shouldn't be a need for testing. That's sort of a bug that we're trying to figure out with Amazon right now. And we've gone through it, but it's
yeah, and I wanted to ask you, because we kind of discussed a little bit from like other sellers. We discussed a little bit of Amazon, and then I would be angry at myself if we didn't really discuss the let's say government. Maybe that's the wrong word, but like I wanted to treat this as an opportunity to talk about the Prop 65, and kind of like just wanted to ask you, like, can you walk us a little bit through California's Prop 65 and how we as sellers can protect ourselves? Like, what's the way there?
Okay, so the answer is it's in flux. This is developing. So Prop 65, for those of you who kind of know this, it's this law in California that basically says that there's a list of, like, let's say 900 materials, chemicals, right? Lead, phthalates, BPA, right? There's like a whole list, mercury, cadmium, like that could theoretically contribute to reproductive harm or cancer. You are required under California law to warn somebody if your product contains any of these things. Now, typically, if you were under 10 employees, you did not have the obligation to make that warning. There's an exemption for under 10 employees. The problem we're seeing today is that Amazon obviously has more than 10 employees, right? Is being told they're accountable. And this is important because the case law changed over the summer. The case of the Lee case, anyone wants to be a nerd about it, but the case law basically created an environment where Amazon was being told they can be held accountable in a way that didn't used to be the case. So the olden days, Amazon the theory was Amazon was a retailer, which they don't like to argue in court for a lot of reasons. But that was the theory. So as a retailer, Amazon had 5 days upon notification to put the warning up on their website, and they have a Prop 65 system, right, in the back end of your inventory, right, for any ASIN. In the back end of your ASIN, you can actually enter in the chemicals involved and put the warning up so that it shows up on Amazon's platform. Don't just go right in the bullet. There's an actual Prop 65 prompt in Amazon's backend in Seller Central. And that way it only shows up when California residents sees it. And that is one way to protect yourself, is to learn what chemicals your product might have and, do the testing and figure out whether you need to put the warning up. This is something we do with our, we have SellerBasics consults on this right now, like all day, every day. It's a lot of people are asking this question. So if you have any questions, certainly reach out through the channel and ask. But it's very easy to do that if you're a private label seller. Sometimes you may not want to because you feel like, hey, that's defaming my product, and there may be reasons not to. But that's sort of the path you can go down to help protect yourself in the future. What I think the real harm of this is, though, is a couple things. If you do get named in one of these lawsuits, even if you had good testing and says it's not valid, Amazon's position is just, we don't want to fight these court cases in court. So we're going to rely on your indemnity obligation, your obligation to hold us harmless. So what we're going to do is, if there's, instead of going after Amazon, we're going to break that off and say, go settle it with them, go settle it with the seller directly. Go settle this case with the seller directly. And just to motivate you to do that quickly, we're going to freeze your funds. So they freeze disbursements. They don't suspend your account. They don't suspend your ASIN, but they will freeze your disbursements until you go and settle this case, right? So we've settled a lot of these cases lately. But it's just really sad because it's just, it comes out of nowhere and people are getting surprised because they're not being named. You're not being named in these lawsuits. They're called 60-day notices, sort of pre-warning, right? You're not being named. And so as these cases progress, Amazon, sometimes people are finding out, a year or 2 years later that they're involved. They didn't know because they weren't named in the case because they just went after Amazon. And so it comes as sort of a surprise, and then there's sort of a rush to try to settle your case. The other tragedy of Prop 65, I think, is for the resellers, because the problem is that resellers are being hit really hard, and resellers do not control their listing. So resellers can't go into the back end of Amazon and put a warning up. One, because they have to be careful if they do, because they might be defaming somebody else's stuff, so they should really be careful about that. And two, even if the warning is appropriate, Amazon doesn't let you control, right? If you're not the person who has control of the listing, you can't put it up. So this is a really crazy case, but this sort of explains also how the case law has changed. So we had a number of people who were selling lead soldering wire, soldering wires, for the soldering iron, like if you're doing circuit boards or something. Yeah. So by definition, lead solder has lead in it, right? It's lead solder, right? So one of the arguments made in the Lee case was that, hey, Amazon, that this product has lead in it. It's literally in your listing. So you can't rely on this 5-day rule. 100% that had lead in it. So there's no off the hook for you. So what did Amazon do? They basically told every person who ever sold lead solder, they gave their names to the law firm that was involved and said, go settle it individually. And so one at a time now, every sellers who never even sold the product to California, but just listed on that listing, sellers who had 1 unit in FBA, they're being told their funds are frozen and they have to pay. And let me tell you how these settlements work out. They're not fun. Let's say you settle for, $15,000 or something, let's just make up a number, right? Let's say that's the number that they want, right? It can't be too high. It can't be too low, because if the number's too high, then they actually might fight it in court, right? But you have to consider the cost of court. Litigation in America is very expensive. So, $10,000 to $15,000 is a great number, because most people are not going to spend the money to fight. Plus, it's complicated. I don't know if you can, because you're not the one being sued. Amazon is. But there may be another solution, which we may get to another time. But the idea is this: if you settle for $15,000, let's say California might get $1,000, and the plaintiff might get $250, and the lawyers will get $14,000, or whatever the rest. So most of the money you're spending is actually just to pay the lawyers' legal fees. And that's why this is such a sick system, because it's a bounty hunter system, right? Like, if I was a bad dude, if I just, if all I cared about was money and didn't care about, had any passion, belief, compassion for who I serve and who I proudly serve, the e-commerce community, the Amazon community, I could go make $1 billion, like just filing these things, like millions probably, filing these cases against sellers all day long. We're that vulnerable right now. And that's why sellers need to take this seriously. We are all that vulnerable right now with this Prop 65 issue. So you need to know what you're doing. If you're a reseller, we do not have a great answer. I'll be honest with you. We don't know how this is going to play out. We know that resellers are getting hurt. We're just asking you to pay attention. Look for listings that have the warning up already. If you see a product in a store or on your product that has a sticker on the packaging, if it's not on Amazon, we recommend don't sell it, because if it's not on the Amazon listing, if it's not designed, if it's not built into the Amazon listing to show up what it's supposed to show up, then, but it's on, that's a definite no-no. But even if it doesn't have the warning or on the Amazon, it still may be. The problem is most products have something, right? The chemical list is so long. Most products have something, right? If you sell fish oil, there's probably going to be mercury in it, just because of the nature of the pollution that's happened in the oceans over the years. There's going to be mercury in the fish. So if you're selling fish oil, you're probably in violation of Prop 65. That's how scary this is, because there's no insulation anymore. We're all vulnerable. So one option, the last thing I'll say about this, one option is, we do a lot of group work. We do a lot of volunteer community stuff, is maybe if enough sellers want to pool together some resources, maybe we go and take on a challenge to this law, or take on a challenge to change some aspects of this law so that the under 10 employee sellers are protected, or to prevent Amazon from imposing indemnity. But that's got to come from a different effort entirely. So for now, this is the environment we're in with Prop 65, unfortunately.
And I will tell Paul that I'm very sure you have much more to say on those topics, and
much more.
Would love to hear.
Yes.
So let's promise each other one thing, because these calls usually are half an hour. So we're
I don't want to run over time.
Can we promise each other that we're going to have a round two at some point, and we'll discuss those?
Yeah, maybe.
Because I think everything is
Yes.
changing as well. So I'm always curious to know that perspective. But we have another comment,
and
that,
maybe around 3 in Poland if you want. We can do it live.
Round three in Poland with some national Polish drinks. It must happen, of course.
Some żubrówka. Yeah.
Some żubrówka. For those who don't know, it's just the juice almost. Linda said SellerBasics awesome, and so thank you, Linda, for sharing and for
we think Linda is
us.
awesome, just for the record, as we do think
Lori.
We do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so, Paul, I'm curious. Do you still accept new sellers and work with new sellers? I know you have a kind of subscription-based model. So could you say in a couple of words like how SellerBasics work and how can people reach out best to you if they find that it would be a good fit to have a legal assistance and a team of experts to support their wholesale business or arbitrage business?
Yeah, a wholesale arbitrage private label. Yeah, it's a simple program. It's $99 a month. There's no contract, right? You can sign up and cancel, have a call with us and cancel. We may not let you back in the program because we might find that abusive, but we've designed it to be as easy as possible. My point of view is if you're running a multi-million-dollar business, even $1 million business, or if you're just starting a business, having a team of lawyers that have your back, who you can run questions by, right? Having a team, an Amazon account health team, right, dedicated to you for like $3 and change a day, which after tax deduction, it's like what, not even $2 a day. It's so cheap. I don't know. I don't know how else to sell it. I don't know what else we can do, but it is $100 a month, and you're having, lawyers who know your business. And there's even things we do. People don't value this stuff. I think it's important. Like, if you want to talk about getting a will and you want help getting a will and a trust and a succession plan, so God forbid if something happened to you, what would they do with your business? What would happen, right? So your family's protected. Like those are the things I always think are important that everyone just yawns. But definitely with respect to how to set up your company, how to protect your assets, how to use IP, create IP. You have trademark questions. We have dedicated trademark attorneys. We've dedicated FDA and FTC lawyers. We have all these people, just like a whole team ready to help you. I know it's not the fun stuff. It's not sales. I get that, but it's necessary if you want to build a business. A lot of these entrepreneurs, we're kind of fly by the seat of our pants, and that's great. But at some point you got to take it seriously and recognize that there's risk out there, and we make it cheap. We want, there's a lot of lawyer phobia. I get the hourly rates. People don't love that. We learned. Well, I knew that the day I started. Like, we only do hourly rates on certain types of projects. We try to do as much flat fee stuff, and you get discounted stuff with SellerBasics. So my suggestion, we just try it out. We absolutely take more members. Even if you have a Prop 65 question, sign up, set up a scheduled call. If you cancel the following month, we may not let you back in, but you technically could do that because we didn't want contracts. Like I said, no contracts. We want to make this so simple for people. Like it's a simple decision. Try it out. You don't like it,
guys, we will also definitely recommend you guys try out SellerBasics and treat your business is important and treat it as such. Paul, thank you very much. Round two is gonna happen. It has to happen. So really appreciating the time you took and the work you do. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that a lot of sellers are now, checking the website and being interested. And I think that's the best thing we can do is just shine some light on those topics and give value where we can, and hoping that either people read, as you said, and educate, or use someone who can help them. So thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely. And to answer Humberto's point, yes, absolutely. If you've never seen how a Prop 65 warning looks, I always like there's a Weber grill that I always say, but you got to put in a California zip code to see the warning. But yes, thank you so much. If you have questions about Prop 65, please feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for letting me on the call. Bardzo dziękuję. Until next time. I would really look forward to rounds 2 and 3 in Warsaw, or maybe by the seashore.
I think 3 is the most enticing with żubrówka. Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bardzo dziękuję. Do widzenia.
Bye.